My name's Grant Ellison, and up until a few days ago, I thought I had a solid marriage. Not some fairy tale romance, but a quiet, dependable, grown-up kind of love. 8 years with the same woman, learning her routines, putting up with her quirks, saying sorry even when I wasn't wrong just to keep the peace. I used to think that made me a good husband, a mature man, a safe harbor. Apparently, I was just a well-fed mutt. It was last Friday when things started to unravel, though truthfully, it had probably been unraveling for years. I just didn't hear the thread snap until we were deep into that drive. Skylar had asked me to take her and her friends, Laura, Haley, and Ruth, to some spa weekend in the hills, about 5 hours away. I remember blinking at her when she asked, surprised, because I'd already made plans to go fishing with Hugo. But she smiled that tight, rehearsed smile she always wore when she needed a favor, and said, "You're so good at long drives. And we need the SUV, you know none of us want to cram into Ruth's Prius." And just like that, I said yes. I packed their bags in the trunk. I filled the gas tank. I even cleaned the dashboard and stocked the center console with snacks and gum. Skylar didn't say thank you, just slid into the back seat, not even the passenger's side, and started chatting with her friends like I was the Uber driver. No one offered me coffee. No one asked how I was. The first hour passed in relative silence for me, except for their occasional requests: turn the heat down, switch the playlist, take this exit instead. I kept my hands on the wheel and nodded. I didn't mind. I was used to fading into the background when Skylar was with her friends. They were the kind of women who wore coordinated brunch outfits and had matching Instagram captions for their girls' getaways. I didn't belong in their world. I never had. But around hour 3, somewhere near the foothills, it happened. The moment that cracked whatever illusion of normal I had left. Skylar was laughing about something Laura had said, and then I heard her voice cut through the cabin like a blade. "Honestly," she said, "he's like a rescue dog. You feed him, he wags his tail. So easy to control." Then the laughter followed. Not polite chuckles. Not confused reactions. They laughed like it was the funniest thing they'd heard all week. I didn't say anything. I didn't flinch. I just tightened my grip on the steering wheel and kept my eyes on the road. But inside, something twisted. Something sharp. I felt it spread down my arms and settle in my stomach. They went quiet for a second after that, maybe realizing I'd heard. Maybe not caring. Haley cleared her throat. Laura tapped at her phone. Skylar changed the topic like she hadn't just compared me to a mutt she picked up off the street. I spent the next 2 hours pretending I was somewhere else, mentally sorting bolts in a toolbox, remembering the sound of the lake at dawn, replaying the joke over and over in my head. Rescue dog. That's what I was to her. When we finally arrived at the spa resort, the women got out laughing again, breezy, carefree. I popped the trunk, grabbed their bags, and stacked them neatly by the valet stand. Skylar barely looked at me. She adjusted her sunglasses and said over her shoulder, "Don't forget to wash the sheets before I get back. They stink like you." No thank you. No kiss goodbye. Just that. And with that, she was gone. The glass doors swallowed her up, and I was left standing there, alone, holding nothing. I got back in the car and sat in the driver's seat for a full 5 minutes before starting the engine. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't call Hugo, even though I wanted to. I just stared out the windshield at nothing, feeling smaller than I'd felt in years. The drive back was different, quieter. I didn't turn on music, didn't check my phone, just let the road roll out in front of me and let that sentence echo in my head like a song on repeat. You feed him, he wags his tail. I used to think Skylar and I were just coasting, like a lot of married couples after the honeymoon phase wears off. You work, you pay bills, you smile through dinners with in-laws and plan for weekends that never quite happen. I told myself we were just busy, stressed, that maybe one day we'd find our rhythm again. But what if there was no rhythm to find? What if the love I thought we had was just obedience? What if I was never her partner, just her convenience? I don't know when it happened, but somewhere between the 3rd and 4th hour of that drive home, I realized something. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt humiliated. And that was worse. When I walked back into our house, everything looked different. The hallway photos, mostly of her. The furniture, stuff she picked out. Even the color of the walls. I'd wanted a soft olive green in the living room, but we got charcoal because she said olive looked cheap. I agreed, because I always did. I stood in our kitchen, staring at the fridge covered in her workout schedule and meal plans. Not a single magnet from my childhood fridge. No photo of my parents. No evidence of my life before her. I was 36. I had a mortgage, a degree in architecture, and a decent credit score. But standing in that house, I felt like a guest. A temporary visitor in the life of a woman who saw me as a trained dog she could show off to friends. I made a sandwich. Not because I was hungry, but because I didn't know what else to do with my hands. I stood there chewing in silence, staring at the floor tiles I installed myself last summer while Skylar went wine tasting with Rachel. She didn't even notice when she came back. And then, like a final twist of the knife, I opened her laptop to check for a delivery confirmation. She'd asked me to return a faulty steamer. Her email was open. Her social media was still logged in. I didn't mean to look, but something told me to click. That's when I saw it. The private group chats, the messages, the memes, and everything I thought I knew started to fall apart. But that's a story for another chapter. All I can say is that drive didn't just take Skylar to a spa resort. It took me somewhere else entirely, out of my denial, and straight into the truth. The moment the front door shut behind me, it felt like something inside me stayed outside. Something I couldn't quite name, but I felt the absence of it immediately, like when you lose your keys but don't realize it until you're already late. I dropped the house keys in the bowl by the door and just stood there. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was heavy, full of unspoken things. I could still hear her laugh in my head, echoing off the highway, as if it had attached itself to the lining of my brain. I took off my shoes in the hallway like I always did. Habit. 8 years of it. My back ached from the drive, my throat dry from not saying a single word for nearly 5 hours. I passed the photo wall on my way to the kitchen, our wedding day, her graduation from grad school, a staged Christmas card from 2 years ago where I was photoshopped thinner because she thought it looked cleaner. Not a single candid photo. Not one moment where I looked genuinely happy. I flicked on the kitchen light. The bulbs were still half dim because Skylar liked the warm tone better. The island counter was covered with her supplements, her expensive matcha tins, her monogrammed glass bottle filled with lemon slices and cucumber. I reached for a bottle of water, lukewarm, and suddenly the silence started to grate. I grabbed the remote, hit power on the TV in the living room just for some noise. But I didn't sit. I walked around instead, pacing like a man who'd just woken up in someone else's home. The couch? She picked it. The shelves? Filled with her books. The rugs? Persian. Well, faux Persian, but expensive. She'd called my recliner an eyesore, so I gave it to Hugo a year ago and never bought another. That's when the realization started sinking in. This wasn't my home. It was hers. And I was just background, support staff, the driver, the guy who installed things, paid things, fixed things, but never owned anything that mattered. I walked to the bedroom. Our bed was made, by me, as usual. Her side still had the lavender spray she used every night. My side was bare. No photos. No trinkets. Just my phone charger and an old book she once told me was too depressing. I sat on the edge of the bed and felt the kind of tired that sleep wouldn't fix. It wasn't just about what she said in the car. That sentence, he's like a rescue dog, sure, it hit deep. But it was more than that. It was everything I'd ignored up until now. The small japs, the dismissive glances, the way her friends looked at me when I'd serve them drinks at the house like I was the hired help. I used to laugh it off, tell myself she was just joking, that she was tired, that she didn't mean it like that. But the truth? That wasn't love. That was convenience dressed up as commitment. And I was too blind, or maybe too scared, to call it out. After a long shower, I threw on some sweatpants and walked back to the kitchen. I opened the fridge. Not a single thing I liked in there. Everything was low sodium, dairy-free, gluten-free, organic. I made a plain peanut butter sandwich and ate it standing up, still staring at the same tile floor I'd laid down with my own 2 hands. She told me I was so good with my hands back then. Funny how praise always came when she needed something. I wandered into her office to put a package on her desk. Another one of her self-care kits had arrived. Lavender oil, herbal tea, some crystal-infused candle. She'd once told me I was too plain for spiritual stuff. I'd laughed at the time. Now it just sounded cruel. That's when I noticed her laptop. It was open, still on sleep mode. She must have left it that way while ordering things last night. I didn't plan to snoop. I'm not the jealous type. I never even set passwords on my phone. But something drew me in. Some ache in my gut that whispered, look. I moved the mouse. Her Facebook was open. And it wasn't the main feed that caught my eye. It was a private message tab. I didn't click it at first. I stared at the names. All familiar. Her spa friends. Her sister Rachel. A few from work. Then my eyes landed on a message thread labeled Rescue Squad Dog Face with ears of joy. I clicked. It was a group chat. Skylar, Laura, Haley, and Ruth. Dozens of messages. Screenshots. Jokes. None of it was private, just 4 women roasting their husbands like it was their part-time job. Skylar. He actually asked if I needed help packing. So obedient. I should give him a treat. Haley. You should teach a class, girl. Ruth. How to domesticate your man in 30 days or less. Laura. Step 1. Deny him affection. Step 2. Watch him do dishes just to get a smile. I scrolled, hands trembling. My face was hot. My ears burned. There was a screenshot of a text I'd sent Skylar 2 weeks ago. Me. Hey, want me to pick up Ty tonight? I know you had a rough day. She captioned it. Such a good boy. Rolls over on command. The next few screenshots were of me around the house. Fixing the garbage disposal. Trimming the hedge. Folding laundry. One of them had audio. I clicked. It was my voice, humming as I repaired the bathroom sink. Skylar whispered over it. Listen to him. In his little husband habitat. He thinks this is love. Then came the laughter. Hers. Laura's. I couldn't even hear the wrench drop. I only heard my dignity splinter in real time. I sat back in the chair. My hands didn't shake. My breathing didn't change. I just stared at the screen, feeling something dark settle into my chest. Not rage. Not yet. Clarity. I closed the laptop gently, like it was a coffin. That was the moment. The turning point. The line between the man I was and the man I had to become. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, making mental checklists. Things to protect. Things to move. Things to cancel. People to trust. Skylar had taken 8 years to slowly erase my voice in this marriage. Now, I was going to find it again. Not by shouting. Not by begging. But by quietly walking away from the leash. Because I finally understood something. I'm not a rescue dog. I'm a man who's finally done being trained. I never used to be a suspicious man. I didn't check phones. Didn't second-guess my partner's words. I believed in giving trust freely because I thought that's what marriage was built on. But after reading through that group chat, watching those cruel jokes made at my expense like I was a performing clown in some private circus, I knew I had to see it all. It's strange how quickly you become someone else when you're wounded enough. The man I used to be would have walked away, maybe cried in the garage and blamed himself. But the man I became in that moment wanted answers. Not revenge. Not even confrontation. Just truth. Cold, full truth, with all the filters stripped off. That Saturday morning, I poured a cup of coffee, black, no sugar, and sat at the kitchen table with Skylar's laptop. She'd left it behind in her rush to get to the spa, assuming as always that I'd just make myself useful until her return. It was still logged into her email, browser, calendar, and cloud drive. No password prompts. Almost too easy. It started with her emails. Hundreds of them. Most mundane product confirmations, shipping notices, fitness newsletters. But then I noticed a folder labeled Wellness Projects. That alone wouldn't have raised an eyebrow, except I remembered her using that term once when I asked her where $900 went from our joint account. Wellness Projects, she'd said dismissively. You wouldn't get it. I opened the folder. Invoices. Multiple. One for a private therapist who wasn't on our insurance plan. Another for some online relationship coaching course. Not for couples. For her alone. The tagline made my jaw tighten. Learn to reclaim your power and reshape your partner without saying a word. There were also PDF notes from the coaching program. I skimmed them. One line stood out in bold. Reward only when behavior aligns with your expectations. Otherwise, create distance. Eventually, they'll adjust. It was like reading a manual on how to train a pet. I backed out of the folder, stomach churning. I opened her cloud gallery next. At first, it was just selfies, gym poses, smoothie bowls, perfectly staged shots of her looking thoughtful in cafes. Then came the videos. One of them was me. I was crouched under the sink, wearing old jeans and a faded t-shirt, fixing the pipe that kept dripping every other week. The angle made it clear she'd set her phone against the wall without my knowledge. I was humming to myself. Skylar's voice whispered in the background. Every time I act cold, he does a chore. Pavlov's husband. A giggle from someone else, probably Laura. The screen went black. I closed the gallery, too numb to keep watching. I checked the calendar next, not even sure what I was looking for. That's when I noticed recurring events labeled RC meeting every other Thursday night. RC. Russ Carmichael. Her boss, the same man she claimed was too old to flirt and just her mentor. A married executive with a history of turnover in his department and rumors swirling about unprofessional conduct. I'd heard whispers, but Skylar always brushed it off like office gossip. She'd laugh and say, "Russ? Please. He barely knows my last name." Funny, then, that she had at least 22 calendar entries involving him. Not meetings, not team events, just RC meeting. I felt heat creeping up my neck, but I wasn't ready to assume anything. Not yet. So I opened her message app. The first thread that jumped out wasn't Russ. It was the same group chat I'd seen before. I skipped over it. There was only so much mockery I could take in a single morning. But then, I saw a name I didn't recognize, Heather M. I clicked. It wasn't Heather. It was Skylar's dummy account. They were sending messages to themselves, clearly storing things secretly. Screenshots, notes, thoughts she didn't want others to see. I scrolled, and my heart sank. There were chat logs with Laura about timing things right. One message from Skylar read, "Russ said once I'm free, he'll make it official. Promotion first, then paperwork." Laura had replied, "Just don't let Grant catch on too soon. He'll probably cry and ruin your narrative." Skylar's response, "Oh please. He'll fold like always. That man still apologizes when I roll my eyes." That's when I shut the laptop. I sat in silence for what felt like hours. My coffee had gone cold. My hands felt foreign to me, like they didn't know what to do anymore. I wasn't just being mocked. I was being used, trained, conditioned. She was slowly phasing me out of her life, already making space for someone else while I sat around believing we were just going through a rough patch. And the worst part? I'd allowed it. I made excuses for it. For years, I thought her coldness was stress. Her absence was ambition. Her constant criticisms were tough love. But it wasn't love. It was manipulation wrapped in charm. A project she took on, got bored with, and was ready to abandon once the next opportunity came with a company bonus. I called Hugo that afternoon. He picked up on the second ring. "Yo, you good? Thought you were at the lake," he said. "I didn't go," I replied. My voice didn't even sound like mine. "You sound weird. You all right?" "No," I said quietly. "Not really." I told him everything. Not the way I'm telling it now. Not so clean, not so composed. I stuttered through some parts. I paused a lot. There were long silences where I didn't know how to explain what I'd just seen. Hugo didn't interrupt. When I finished, there was a beat of silence before he spoke. "All right," he said. "What's the plan?" That question hit me harder than I expected. What's the plan? For the first time in years, someone wasn't asking me to stay quiet, keep peace, or try harder. He was asking how I wanted to take control. I didn't have all the answers yet, but one thing was clear. I wasn't going to confront Skylar right away. That's what she'd expect. I wasn't going to blow up and give her a victim card to wave in front of her friends. No. I was going to do something she wouldn't see coming. Take back control, quietly, deliberately, and on my own terms. I ended the call and grabbed a notepad. Made a list. Hugo agreed to help with the steps. Finances. Locks. My own space. Emotional distance. Everything I'd ignored, everything I let slide, I was going to fix it. Not to win her back. Not to punish her. But to finally stop being the background character in my own damn life. She trained me? Huh? Well, it's time I untrained myself. It's strange how calm I felt when I started making the list. Not angry. Not bitter. Just focused. The kind of focus you get when you finally stopped lying to yourself. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was rebuilding. Not for her. Not to prove anything. Just to protect what little I had left of myself. First thing I did was open a new bank account. Not a joint one. Not a shared savings. Just mine. I walked into the local branch that Monday morning and asked to speak to someone in private. The banker, young guy, maybe mid-20s, smiled politely until I explained I was closing a joint account I'd shared with my wife of 8 years. I watched his face shift the moment I mentioned that. Sympathy, maybe. Or recognition. Like he'd seen this movie before. He didn't ask questions. Just nodded and handed me the paperwork. I transferred half of what was left in the joint account into my new one. I didn't take it all. I wasn't trying to start a war. But I wasn't going to leave myself exposed anymore. I also canceled the Wellness Box subscription she'd been charging to my card. $300 a month for powders and stones and jars of air-scented self-importance. After that, I called the storage unit place on Maple Street. Booked one under my name. Climate controlled. Enough space to fit everything she'd left behind when she went to the spa. I wasn't going to throw anything out, not yet, but I wasn't going to let her come back and act like nothing had changed either. Then I changed the locks. I'd done it before, once when we got the place, once when Skylar lost her purse. So I knew how. I went down to the hardware store, picked out a better deadbolt, and installed it myself that night. Hugo offered to help, but I needed to do it alone. One last quiet act of reclaiming the door to my own home. I left her keys on the kitchen table, and then I packed her things. Not all of it, just what was clearly hers. Clothes, shoes, her gym equipment, makeup, the drawer of beauty products she guarded like a vault, her laptop, her vision board, the little frame quote that used to hang in her office that said, "Train your man or he'll become someone else's headache." Yeah, that one went in the box first. I labeled everything neatly, sealed it up, and loaded it into the truck. Drove it to the unit. Sent the address and entry code to her sister Rachel with a simple message. "Skylar's things are here. Lease is under my name. She has 30 days to retrieve them." Rachel didn't reply, but the message was marked as read. Then came the hardest part, telling people. I started small, Hugo already knew, and he offered to take me out for dinner that night. I declined. I needed space. I needed to feel what I was doing, not distract myself from it. The next day, I called my mother. Now, my mom is the kind of woman who believes in forgiveness above all else. Grew up in the church. Thinks therapy is a gift from God. But she's also sharp. I knew she'd want to hear the full story, so I told her everything. The rescue dog comment, the group chat, the recordings, the manipulation, the money. Russ. She went quiet. That same heavy silence I felt in my own chest. Then she said, "Are you sure there's no saving this?" And I told her the truth. There's nothing left to save. She cried a little. Said she'd pray for both of us. Asked me not to close my heart completely. I told her I wouldn't. But I wasn't going to give it to someone who used it like a leash again. The rest came quickly. I called the utilities. Had them switched over. Canceled the cleaning service Skylar used that charged me double for emergency dusting. I called the lawn guy and told him to invoice me directly now. And then, when everything practical was done, I sat down and wrote the hardest email I've ever written. Subject line, the truth about Skylar and me. I didn't post it publicly. Didn't make a scene. I sent it to a small list of people who'd been part of our lives. Mutual friends, her family, a few of my coworkers who'd seen her parade me around at office parties like some obedient accessory. I attached screenshots. A few audio files. I didn't add commentary. I just let them see for themselves. I ended the message with one line. "Please don't contact me to tell me I should work it out. You weren't the one being trained." And then I turned off my phone. For the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. Not joy, not relief, but something still, quiet, like standing in a burned-down house and realizing you survived the fire. The messages came the next day. I didn't check them all, but a few slipped through. Laura messaged me. "I'm sorry. I didn't know she took it that far. I was wrong to laugh. You didn't deserve that." Haley messaged too. Shorter. "I didn't mean it personally. Whatever that meant." Ruth? She didn't say a word. Probably too proud. But Skylar, she was the storm. She called, texted, emailed, left voicemails. "What the hell are you doing? Grant, this isn't funny. You changed the locks? You're being insane, call me." And then the guilt started. "Can we talk? Please don't do this. You're blowing everything out of proportion." But I didn't reply, because there was no proportion to blow up. She made me into a joke, and then laughed when I played along. Now she could sit with the silence. I wasn't angry anymore. That would have taken too much energy. I was done giving her power over my emotions. I didn't want to scream, didn't want to confront, didn't want closure wrapped in her crocodile tears. I wanted peace, and I was finally starting to feel it. I looked around the house that night. It still looked like hers, but something had changed. It was quieter now, warmer somehow, like the house itself had exhaled. I made a simple dinner, eggs and toast, washed the dishes, lit a candle. One of the few things in the house that I'd actually picked out. It smelled like cedar wood and clean air. Masculine. Honest. Then I sat on the couch, turned on some Miles Davis, and watched the sun go down. And for the first time in a long, long time, I didn't feel like anyone's project. I felt like a man finally locking the world out and letting himself back in. The doorbell rang at 3:42 p.m. on Monday. It wasn't a polite ring. It was frantic. The kind of ringing someone does when they think if they press hard enough, the door might forget it's locked. I didn't move at first. I was in the living room, legs up on the coffee table, watching a rerun of a show I didn't care about. A cup of tea in my hand, not because I like tea, but because Skylar hated the smell of it, and suddenly, that was reason enough for me to start drinking it. The ringing continued. A pause. Then pounding. I didn't have to check the peephole. I knew who it was. Skylar always had this pattern. Silence, then guilt, then pressure, then theatrics. I used to cave somewhere between guilt and pressure. This time, I let the storm hit the door. "Grant," she shouted. "Grant, open the damn door." I muted the TV, took another sip of tea. Then I stood and walked quietly to the window by the hallway, peeking through the edge of the curtain. She looked exactly like I imagined she would, disheveled but pretending she wasn't. Designer coat over leggings. Messy bun, no makeup, oversized sunglasses like she was hiding from paparazzi. Her phone in one hand, keys in the other, waving both like weapons. I leaned against the wall and listened. "You're seriously doing this?" she yelled. "You're making a scene. Do you want the neighbors to hear?" Funny how that was her concern now. The same woman who'd laughed with her friends about training me was suddenly worried about decorum. I didn't speak, didn't open the door, just watched her, detached, like watching an actress fumble through the wrong script. She tried calling next. I heard the phone buzz from the kitchen. 14 missed calls by then. The voicemail started piling up, some tearful, some furious, all carefully balanced between "this is your fault" and "I love you. Please stop this." I didn't listen to any of them. Eventually, the noise stopped. She stood there for a long time, pacing, looking at the door like she could will it to open. Then, after almost 20 minutes, she pulled out her phone and walked back to her car. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. The next morning, I was in a meeting at the office when my assistant poked her head in. There's a woman here asking for you," she whispered awkwardly. "She says it's important." I knew before I asked. Did she give a name? She nodded. "Skylar. I told her you were in a meeting. She's in the lobby." I took a deep breath, stood, buttoned my jacket, and walked out like I was heading to battle. She was there, in the middle of the lobby, eyes wide and glossy like a soap opera heroine. She didn't even wait for me to speak. "Why are you doing this to me?" she asked, her voice trembling just enough to sound sincere. "You changed the locks, ignored my messages, sent my things to a storage unit like I'm some stranger." I nodded slowly. "Because you've been acting like I'm a stranger for years." Her face twisted, caught somewhere between shock and indignation. "Don't do that. Don't flip this on me." I folded my arms. "No flipping. Just facts." She looked around, clearly aware of the receptionist pretending not to watch. "Can we talk? In private?" "No," I said. Everything that needed to be said was already said. In your group chats, in your videos, in your wellness project notes. That froze her. "You went through my things," she hissed. "After I drove you and your friends across the state, listened to you call me a rescue dog, and got told to wash sheets because they smelled like me?" "Yeah, I did." Her shoulders dropped. For a second, I saw her drop the performance too. "Grant, I didn't mean that. It was a stupid joke." "No," I said, my voice steady. "It was a confession." She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. I was venting. Everyone does it. No, not everyone turns their spouse into a punchline. Not everyone mocks someone they say they love to feel better about themselves. Her hand went to her chest, clutching at some invisible ache. 8 years. "Grant, you're really going to throw it all away?" I looked her in the eye, and I said it. "I'm not your rescue dog anymore." The words felt strange coming out of my mouth, like I was borrowing someone else's line. But it landed. I saw it hit her like a slap. Her mouth dropped open, then shut again. I turned and walked away, left her standing in the lobby like a statue that forgot its pose. Back in my office, I sat down, took a slow breath, and realized something important. I wasn't angry. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't fantasizing about getting back at her or making her suffer. I wasn't anything. I was free. That evening, I sat on the porch with Hugo. We drank beer from the bottle and watched the sky turn pink. "She showed up at work?" he asked. "Lobby. Full dramatic effect," I said, nodding. "And what did you do?" "Told her I'm done playing house pet." He laughed. "Did she cry?" "A little. Not sure if it was real." Hugo leaned back in his chair, took a swig, and said, "Proud of you, man. Most guys in your position would have gone nuclear. Blown it up. You're doing it like a surgeon. Clean, cold, no blood." I didn't say anything. I just stared at the yard. It was quiet again. My house looked the same, but it felt different, like it belonged to someone who finally knew what dignity tasted like. And I planned to keep it that way. She begged for one night to talk. I wasn't planning to give her anything. Not a meeting, not a conversation, not even the decency of a shared space. But Hugo convinced me to allow one final sit down. It's not for her, he said. It's for you. Let her look you in the eye and see what she lost. So I agreed. One night, one conversation, one room, no yelling, no bargaining, just truth laid bare. I prepared like it was trial day. I printed every screenshot, messages, group chats, the rescue dog comment, the wellness coaching files, bank statements from the last 9 months showing consistent withdrawals Skylar made from our joint account under labels like groceries and medical that ended up funding spa packages, designer handbags, and what looked like a hotel in Aspen. I set them out like exhibits on the kitchen island, my courtroom bench. Neat, precise, impossible to ignore. Then I opened my laptop and queued up the videos. Not all of them, just a few key ones. The recordings of her laughing behind my back while I fixed things around the house, comparing me to a pet husband. One video of her FaceTiming Laura while whispering about how she'd trained me to obey her moods. I didn't feel cruel doing it. I felt clean, like I was clearing out rot. She arrived at 6:32 p.m. wearing my favorite dress, the navy blue one with the little sleeves and the lace at the bottom. She used to wear it on our date nights. The first time I told her I loved her, she was wearing that same dress. I'd be lying if I said it didn't punch a hole through my chest to see it again. But this time, it felt like bait. Like a hunter wearing perfume in the woods, hoping the deer walks closer. She stepped inside cautiously, I scanning the house like it might look unfamiliar now. Maybe it did. Maybe she could already feel that this wasn't her stage anymore. "Grant," she said, her voice soft, rehearsed. "Thank you for letting me." "Sit down," I interrupted, gesturing to the stool at the counter. She blinked but followed instructions. I noticed that instinctively how she followed direction when the power shifted. I'd never seen it so clearly before. I stood across from her, arms folded, silent. Her eyes darted to the papers in front of her. She reached for one, an email exchange between her and Ruth where she joked about making me sleep on the couch for forgetting almond milk. "You went through my stuff?" she said, her tone sharpening. "I lived with you," I replied. "We shared a bank account, a roof, a bed. You didn't leave me much choice." She flipped through more pages. Her face tightened when she reached the receipts, makeup, gifts, spa treatments, all bought with our joint card. Over $20,000 across 6 months. She looked up, already defensive. That was supposed to be temporary. I was stressed. "Work's been. You labeled these as medical expenses. I needed them for my sanity. Then you should have used your own card." She flinched. The confidence cracked a little. I leaned forward and tapped the next stack of printouts, screenshots of her group chat with Laura, Haley, and Ruth. All the jokes. All the mockery. My name reduced to emojis and punchlines. My efforts turned into comedy. She didn't speak. Just sat there, jaw clenched. "I want you to read them," I said, out loud. She looked horrified. "What? If you're proud of what you said, read it out loud. Right here. Right now. Just to me. No audience." She glanced down at the paper in front of her. I watched her lips twitch. "Honestly, he's like a rescue dog. You feed him, he wags his tail. So easy to control." The sentence came out barely above a whisper. "You laughed when you wrote that," I said. "You laughed in a car full of women I drove across the state. You all laughed." "I was venting," she muttered. "You don't understand how hard it is being with someone who just gives up their whole personality to please you." I raised my eyebrows. "You mean being with someone who listens? Shows up? Fixes what breaks? Buys groceries? Covers rent?" She crossed her arms. "You made everything about responsibility. You were boring, Grant. Predictable. I felt like I was living with a maintenance man, not a husband." There it was. The real truth. No filter. I didn't even flinch. "And yet you had no problem using me for convenience." "Don't twist it," she said quickly. "I never wanted things to go this far. I just needed space." Russ understood that. Ah, there it was. I tilted my head. "Russ, you're not denying it then?" She hesitated for half a second. That was all I needed. I saw the calendar, the messages, the RC meetings. "You celebrated the spa weekend as your pre-promotion party, didn't you?" The one he promised if you dropped the deadweight husband. Her face went pale. Who told you that? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. She stood suddenly. So what now? You're going to humiliate me? You're going to tell everyone I cheated and paint yourself as the victim? I'm not painting anything, I said quietly. I just laid out the canvas. You filled it in. I gave you years of my life, she yelled, voice rising now, hands trembling. I kept this house together. I cleaned. I planned. I carried us through every social event where people thought you were too quiet or too awkward to matter. I thought we were a team, I replied, not yelling, not shaking. Turns out I was just part of the furniture. She scoffed. So what? You're going to be some self-righteous monk now? Start over with your pride and a pile of paperwork? Good luck finding someone who'll tolerate your dullness. I reached under the counter and clicked play on the speaker. Her voice filled the room. That recording, her Spock car comment. Loud, cruel, echoing. He's like a rescue dog. She stopped speaking. I paused the audio. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was righteous. I'm not dull, I said. I'm dependable. And dependable doesn't mean disposable. Skylar said nothing. Her lips were quivering, but no tears came. Just rage. She wanted control back and didn't know how to get it. Her manipulation tricks weren't working. Her beauty wasn't landing. Her lies were collapsing on impact. So she did the only thing left. She blamed. You're blowing up our entire life over a few stupid jokes and a man who doesn't mean anything to me. I shook my head slowly. No. I'm walking away from a woman who never saw me as her equal. She opened her mouth again, but I was done. Take your things, I said. Leave the dress. It belongs to a version of you I used to love. And then I walked out of the room, not even checking if she followed. Because I didn't need to. She already knew the verdict. And this time, I was the one handing down the sentence. I didn't expect anyone else to show up that night. After Skylar stormed out, face red, heels stabbing the floor like accusations, I thought that was it. That the chapter was closed. I'd drawn the line. She crossed it. Now we were just strangers with paperwork left between us. I was still in the kitchen, cleaning up the mess from the storm she left behind, paper sheets shoved off the counter, her untouched tea, a crumpled tissue she left behind like an afterthought, when the doorbell rang again. I frowned. I wasn't expecting anyone. My first thought was that she came back. Maybe forgot something. Maybe thought she had one last card to play. I didn't answer right away. I walked to the door slowly, cautiously. This time, I checked the peephole. It wasn't Skylar. It was Laura. That stopped me cold. She stood on the porch in a black coat, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. No makeup, no wine glass in hand, no mocking laughter curled on her lips. Just her, holding a manila envelope, shifting her weight from one foot to the other like she was nervous. I opened the door just a crack. Laura, she nodded. Hey, I know I shouldn't be here. I'll only take a second. Can I come in? I hesitated. This was one of the same women who sat in my car laughing about how easy I was to control. One of Skylar's three-ring circus enablers. The same friend who'd clapped along to Skylar's stories like they were open-mic comedy shows at my expense. But something in her eyes was different. So I opened the door and stepped aside. She walked in, glanced around like she half expected Skylar to appear from the hallway. She's not here, I said. We had our talk. Ended about 20 minutes ago. Laura let out a breath. Good. Then maybe you'll listen to what I have to say before throwing me out. I folded my arms. You've got 2 minutes. She held up the envelope. I came to give you this. I should have given it to you a long time ago. But I was scared. Scared of losing her. Of being caught in the middle. Of burning every bridge. But after what I saw tonight, after how she treated you, I realized I don't want to be part of her cover anymore. I looked at the envelope, then back at her. What is it? Proof, she said. Of everything you already suspected, and a few things you didn't. I took it and opened it slowly. Inside were printed screenshots, text threads, photo stills, copies of emails. I didn't even need to scan through them. It started 6 months ago, with Russ Carmichael. You probably figured that out already. She used to joke that if she played her cards right, she'd finally get the promotion and get out of this marriage in one move. I said nothing, just kept turning pages. Photos of Skylar and Russ at a hotel bar, more of them at a resort. A selfie of them in a bathrobe mirror, his hand clearly on her waist. Text between them planning Friday escapes. Code names like wellness meeting and vision alignment. Laura continued. The spa weekend wasn't just a spa trip. It was a celebration. Russ told her he'd fast-track her into a senior position after she filed for divorce. They were finalizing everything that weekend. Benefits, salary package, all of it. I looked up, and you knew. Her face fell. I didn't know everything. Not at first. I laughed at the jokes, yeah. I enabled it. But I thought it was just Skylar venting. Like we all do. I didn't know she was planning to leave you behind like trash at the curb. I let the silence stretch. She waited for me to scream, or tell her to leave. But I didn't. I just stood there, watching the truth lay itself bare like kindling before a match. I confronted her last week, Laura said quietly. Told her she was being cruel. That you didn't deserve to be publicly humiliated for the sake of her ego. What did she say? She laughed. Laura replied. Said I was being dramatic. That I didn't understand how boring it was to be married to someone who actually cared. She said, her voice cracked, and she swallowed. She said, let him cry. It'll make the divorce easier. The court's like sensitive guys. He can have the house. I'll have my life back. I sat down. Not because I was weak, but because the weight of it finally settled in. She didn't just fall out of love. She weaponized it. She crafted an exit strategy with precision, and she didn't care who got burned in the process. Laura took a few steps back. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I didn't want you to keep thinking you were crazy or weak. You were neither. You were used. I looked at her. For the first time, I saw not Skylar's echo, but a woman who had clearly been scorched by proximity to someone toxic. Her eyes were tired. Her hands were trembling. What changed? I asked. Tonight, she said. Seeing her scream like that, call you names, spin the story into you being unstable, I couldn't keep quiet. I won't be part of her fiction anymore. I nodded slowly. Thank you, I said. Not for siding with me, but for telling the truth. She turned to go. Paused at the door. She's going to come for you hard now, Laura said. When she realizes she lost control, she's going to try to spin it. She already did, I replied. She cried in the lobby at my office. Told my assistant I was emotionally abusive. Classic projection. Laura let out a dry laugh. That sounds like her. She opened the door, then looked back one last time. For what it's worth. I hope you find someone who sees you as a man, not a project. With that, she left, and the house fell silent again. I sat there with the evidence spread out in front of me like puzzle pieces. But for the first time, I didn't feel broken. I didn't feel defeated. I felt something else. Clarity. I knew who I was. I knew what she did. And now, so would everyone else. I picked up my phone, opened a new email, attached the documents, typed just one sentence. The version you've heard is incomplete. Then I hit send. To her parents, her sister, her friends, my lawyer, her workplace. She betrayed me. But now, her lies were about to collapse under the weight of her own mask. And I didn't have to lift a single finger. The truth was already loud enough. The next time she reached out, her tone had changed. No more voicemails that wobbled between fury and guilt. No more texts full of sarcasm or vague threats. This time, it was a polite email, too polite. Subject line, can we settle this privately? A body full of soft, strategic language. I think we both made mistakes. I don't want this to turn into a war. Let's talk. Just us. No lawyers yet. We can be adults. I stared at the screen, rereading that phrase, just us. The same woman who paraded my humiliation like a prize now wanted to play house one more time, just until she could grab what she needed and slip out clean. I didn't respond. 3 hours later, another email came in. This one angrier, less polished. If you're trying to punish me, it won't work. I'm not scared of you. I just want to move forward. I didn't respond to that one either. Then came the offer. I'll sign whatever you want. Just unlock the accounts. There it was. The panic. The unraveling. The moment when someone who thought they held all the cards suddenly realizes the table's been flipped, and they're the only one still sitting. I talked to my lawyer the next morning. Her name was Delia Marston. Calm, sharp, and absolutely ruthless in a way that made me want to take notes. She didn't ask me if I wanted to be vindictive. She asked me what I needed to feel free. Do you want the house? She asked. I shrugged. Honestly, I'm not even sure I want the curtains. I just want a clean cut. No strings. No chances to twist this into a reconciliation attempt. Delia smiled. You're the ideal client. Clear-headed and done. She drew up the paperwork by the end of the week. When Skylar found out I had retained legal counsel, she called me 17 times in 1 hour. I let every call go to voicemail. By the 18th, I was getting messages from her sister Rachel, her coworker Angela, even her old Pilates instructor, each one carrying the same passive-aggressive tone of "can't you just talk it out? Or maybe you're being too extreme." Then came the tantrum. It started with a text, "You want to play hardball? Fine. Let's both lose." Then a second, "Don't think people don't know what you're doing. You're trying to make me look crazy." Then the final one, 8 years. Does that mean nothing to you? That was the one that stopped me. Not because it worked, but because for a second, I remembered all the little good moments, the walks, the quiet dinners, the inside jokes that felt like secrets only we could share. But then I remembered what I'd heard, what I'd seen, what I'd become in her eyes. And the part of me that used to ache for her finally stopped aching. That night, I agreed to one final meeting, but only in the presence of Delia. We met in her downtown office. Clean white walls, floor-to-ceiling windows that made the space feel like truth had nowhere to hide. Skylar arrived wearing her courtroom face, lip gloss sharp, hair pinned, eyes rehearsed. She didn't acknowledge Delia, barely looked at me, just took her seat and crossed her legs. "Let's be reasonable," she began. "We both know dragging this out helps no one." Delia opened her file. "My client is already being reasonable. He's offering a no-contest divorce. No alimony. No media. You keep your car. He keeps the house." Skylar blinked. "What about the savings account?" Delia slid a document across the table. "Already frozen. Any movement now would be considered contempt." That was when the cracks showed. Skylar's lips parted. "Wait, you froze it?" Delia looked over her glasses. "Correct. The evidence your husband has of misappropriation of funds was sufficient." Skylar turned to me like she forgot we weren't alone. "You froze our account?" I met her stare without blinking. "You drained it first. I just stopped the bleeding." She leaned back. "You really want to do this? In front of strangers? You want to make this public?" "No," I said calmly. "That's why I'm here with my lawyer. Because the last time I trusted you behind closed doors, I became a punchline in your group chat." Delia slid the second folder forward. "These are the non-negotiables. You sign today, we both walk. No smear campaign. No public fallout. But you attempt to manipulate or defame Mr. Ellison again, and we release the full file. All of it. Every video. Every screenshot." Skylar stared at the folder. Her hand trembled. Then she slapped it off the table. The papers scattered like white feathers across the floor. Her voice rose. "You think you're noble? You think you're some kind of martyr? You're pathetic, Grant. You always were. You let me walk all over you, and now you want to meddle because you finally grew a spine." Delia didn't flinch. She picked up the pages, stacked them slowly, and said with a sigh, "I'm adding a restraining order clause." Skylar stood abruptly. Her final words, spoken with venom, weren't even shouted. They were whispered, like a curse. "You were the easiest mistake I ever made." I stood, buttoned my coat, and replied, "And you were the last one I'll ever let repeat itself." As she stormed out, Delia leaned toward me and said, "Congratulations." "For what?" I asked. "For surviving her long enough to escape." We finalized the documents that Friday. Delia filed everything with the court, and I went home to a house that now echoed with absence, but not the kind that hurts. The kind that clears space. Space to breathe. Space to think. Space to heal. I didn't celebrate. No drinks. No parties. Just silence. A silence I chose. One that didn't mock me, didn't talk over me, didn't make me beg for affection like a dog sitting by a door. I took a walk that evening past the lake, through the trail Skylar never liked. I watched the water reflect the gold streaks of sunset and thought about all the parts of me I'd silenced for years. The things I liked but gave up. The opinions I swallowed. The man I used to be. No more games. No more bending so someone else could feel tall. No more rescuing people who don't want to be saved, just worshipped. And for the first time in 8 years, I didn't feel like I had to explain myself to anyone. I moved out a week later. Not because I was forced to. Technically, I had every right to stay in the house. But I didn't want to live among ghosts. Every room held an echo of the version of myself I'd been trained to become. The agreeable man. The fixer. The apologizer. I needed new walls. New space. A life where the air didn't carry the scent of her perfume or the chill of her silence. Hugo had a guest room. Barely furnished, half used for storage, but it might as well have been a palace to me. The mattress was lumpy, the window blinds didn't close properly, and I had to share a bathroom with his cat that hated everyone but him. Still, it was the most peaceful sleep I'd had in months. "I'll only stay a few weeks," I told him when I moved in. Stay as long as you need, he replied. As long as you do one thing. What's that? He grinned. Start living for you again. That sounded simple. But when you spent 8 years shaping yourself around another person's wants, figuring out what you like feels like learning to walk with new legs. The first thing I did was clear the rest of our joint accounts. Not because I was being petty, but because Skylar was still trying to tap into them using leftover apps and linked cards. Delia handled the legal stuff, freezing what was necessary and securing everything in my name. I wasn't rich, but for once, I wasn't bleeding either. She kept spreading rumors. The first one came from Rachel, Skylar's sister, who messaged me out of the blue with a vague, backhanded attempt at reconciliation. I know things got messy, she wrote, but Skylar's telling people you were emotionally unstable, that you isolated her, that you were jealous of her success. I stared at the message for a long time. Jealous? I paid the bills. I covered her debt. I stayed home while she traveled with coworkers. I clapped through her wins even when I was breaking quietly in the background. If anything, I'd been her shadow. And now she wanted to paint that as control. But I didn't argue. I didn't reply. I just blocked the number. Hugo called it emotional detox. I called it peace. It was a strange thing, letting people believe whatever they wanted, while you quietly outgrew their versions of you. A few days later, something unexpected happened. Skylar's dad called me. We hadn't spoken in over a year. He was a cold man, old school, suit and tie even on weekends. The kind of guy who believed success made you morally superior. I braced myself for a lecture, but his voice on the other end wasn't angry. It was quiet. Grant, he said, after a pause. I wanted to say, I'm sorry. That knocked the wind out of me. He went on. I didn't know how bad it had gotten. Skylar told us bits and pieces, but after seeing what you sent, the screenshots, the videos, it was clear. You didn't deserve that. I didn't say anything. I didn't trust myself to. She's been like this since college, he said. Manipulative. We enabled it. We covered for it. And she learned that she could rewrite the story if she just said it loud enough. She's still trying, I murmured. I know, but people are starting to see through it. He sighed. You were the only man who actually loved her for who she was. And she broke you on purpose. There was another silence between us, longer this time. Take care of yourself, Grant. And if you ever need anything, don't be a stranger. I hung up and just sat on the bed for a while. Not crying, not smiling, just breathing. For the first time in years, I felt like someone had truly seen me. Not as a tool, not as a husband accessory, not as someone to laugh at or fix or control, but as a man who did his best and deserved better. The rest of the week passed in quiet steps. I made a list of everything I wanted to do, things I had shelved for years. I signed up for a woodworking class at the community center. I reconnected with my brother, someone Skylar always dismissed as too redneck for her polished crowd. I called my mom and talked with her for over an hour without feeling like I had to lie and say we're doing fine. And I got coffee with someone new. Not a date, not a grand romance. Just a woman named Camille I met at the community garden. She complimented the way I cut weeds around the fence. I complimented her boots. She laughed. It felt easy. No roles to play. No one to impress. Just conversation. And in that moment, I realized something. Skylar had spent years convincing me I was boring. Predictable. Plain. But I was never boring. I was steady. Loyal. Consistent. I gave love without measuring it. I stayed when it would have been easier to walk. I chose peace over pride more times than I could count. And now? Now I was finally choosing myself. The divorce wasn't finalized yet. Delia said it would take a few more weeks. But I'd stopped counting the days. I didn't need a court to validate what I already knew in my bones. That chapter was closed. What remained were the pages I hadn't written yet. The next morning, I woke early, made real breakfast. No protein powders. No meal plans. Just eggs, bacon, and toast, burnt slightly on the edges, the way I like it. I sat on Hugo's tiny porch, plate in hand, listening to the birds. And I smiled. Not a big, triumphant grin. Just a small, quiet smile. Because the man I'd lost for so long was finally coming back. It's been 6 weeks. 6 weeks since Skylar stormed out of that office with her signature flip-flops of rage and grace. 6 weeks since I packed up what was left of my pride and walked into Hugo's spare room. 6 weeks since I looked in the mirror and finally saw myself again. The divorce is nearly final now. One more court date, a few more signatures. Delia said we could do it over Zoom, but I told her I'd show up in person. I want to be there. Not out of pettiness, not for the drama, but because I owe it to the man I used to be. The one who kept showing up, even when no one noticed. Especially him. Life hasn't been perfect since she left, but it's been mine. I get up when I want. I eat what I like. I read in silence, with no one asking if I'm done yet. I take slow walks in the morning, real ones, not the we're late for brunch power marches Skylar called exercise. I breathe easier. My body feels lighter. My chest doesn't ache when the sun sets. My hands don't shake when the phone rings. I didn't expect healing to look like this. Not flashy. Not some grand, Instagrammable triumph. Just quiet peace. I still get moments, small flashes, where my brain tries to wander into old corners. Like when I pass that street downtown where we had our anniversary dinner one year, or when I hear someone laugh a little too much like Haley or Ruth. I used to brace for impact, for anger or sorrow. But now, the memories pass over me like wind. Noticeable, but no longer able to knock me down. I deleted every photo of her 2 weeks ago. Not in rage, just readiness. They didn't hurt anymore, and that's how I knew it was time. She's still trying, of course. She posts cryptic quotes on her social media about betrayal and narcissists. Her friends keep leaving little comments like, "You're so strong," and they never appreciate the good ones. And her latest story? Apparently, I had a breakdown. Skylar now says I snapped under pressure and left her for someone else. That I manipulated her. That I made up the cheating. Funny how fast the truth gets repainted when a person is drowning in the image they created. But here's the thing, I stopped correcting anyone. I don't need to. The people who know me, know. And the ones who choose not to? They were never really in my corner to begin with. You'd be surprised how many people disappear when you stop playing the nice guy who takes the hits and keeps smiling role. When I set boundaries, some folks made it clear I was only valuable when I was bendable. Now that I'm not, radio silence. But I've made space for better ones. People like Camille. Yeah, we've gone out a few more times. Still casual. Still slow. We talk about real things, books, music, what makes us feel alive. She asks questions and listens without waiting to pounce with advice. She laughs without needing someone else to look small. The other night, she told me, "You carry peace with you now. It shows in your eyes." That one sentence meant more than 8 years of being told to fix your face whenever I didn't smile on command. I haven't told her everything about Skylar yet. Not all of it. Not because I'm hiding anything, but because I want the next chapter of my life to be about me, not the woman who mistook my love for weakness. The last loose end was the house. I went back once, with Delia, just to walk through before the final papers were filed. Skylar had moved out by then. The place was empty, echoing. My footprints felt loud against the hardwood. The walls were still painted in her chosen colors. The scent of vanilla candles still clung to the air like an echo. I stood in the kitchen, the same place I used to make dinner while she scrolled through her phone, and I realized. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel angry. I just felt done. Delia turned to me and said, "Want to keep it or sell it?" I said, "Let's sell it. Because I don't want a house that feels like a museum for a man I no longer am. I want new light, new windows, new air." That afternoon, Hugo met me for lunch. He clinked his beer against my glass and said, "So, you've officially ghosted your past life. What now?" I smiled. "Now I build one that actually fits." "Big plans?" "None," I said. "Just honest ones."
It is actually quite